right, we are now at the final session, session 6, ladies and gentlemen. Let me call here to the stage our moderator, who will be Erdal Seyhan. He is the CEO of the World Tourism Forum Institute Hotels. Hello. And we have Dan Anderson, Director of 4th Street London. Great to have you. All right, enjoy. Design, delivery and operations of new destinations. Thank you.
Hi, Dan. Well, first of all, thanks very much for everyone, and then being very patient till this time. Hopefully, we will be finishing with the 1 hour delay, which shows also how the interest and then how this forum was successful, because the interest and then the attention was much more higher than we were expecting. And thanks for joining us today. You made it all the way from London for a day trip, and then me and Dan, we have a very long history in the developments of the destinations, with the very successful, the master planning, and then the private commercial real estate with the almost a signature and then landmark destinations in especially Central Asia and then the CIS the parts. But of course, everything has been changed since 2020. We have a new friend, COVID, and then which we believe that he is not very willing to leave us very soon, and then maybe we will be facing the new versions. Since you are based in London, and then they're very closely working with the design, engineering, and then the consultancy, and then the financing, the environment. After COVID, everybody talks about the challenges, but I believe that there are also opportunities, which is raising. If we can name it, what are these opportunities, and then these opportunities are more regional, that they're like within the UK or within the European Union, or these opportunities can be expanded to the developing and then the frontier markets.
Thanks, Erdal, and thank you all for having me, and congratulations to those of you who have stuck it out right to the very end, so well done. It's an interesting question about COVID. It's obviously had huge changes across the whole sector, and we've seen it here today. I mean, the biggest thing is there is no longer, we've learned now, we've got the technology, we've got the abilities, there is no longer the necessity to travel if we don't want to. I even asked the question when I was invited to come here, do I need to be there in person, or can I zoom in and stuff like that? And it just changes the decision-making calculus that you make about whether or not to travel. And I think what it leads to is this push for quality. I think that's the theme of this final session, is how do you deliver higher quality? Because you have to make it ever more worthwhile to make that trip, because it needs a stronger financial incentive, it needs a stronger environmental objective, and also you need to overcome the fact that it's very convenient and I can just as easily zoom into a session as it is to travel there. And that, what are the mechanisms that deliver that higher quality? We've heard, from some of the speakers today, and I think it's a little bit of everything that we've heard today. It's better financial systems, better incentives, better relationship between government and the private sector, better data, better understanding of the market, and all of these things coming together to deliver a rounded experience that says, I'm just not going to get the same experience by sitting at my kitchen table and zooming into a session. It is worth my while to get on an airplane and go.
Yeah. When you talk about this experience, it is interesting actually, because the some part of this morning's session is also the tourism has actually changed. The demand behaviors has changed. But the demand is still there, and then amazingly, is actually is more and more, okay, that the, I don't know, maybe the psychologically, okay, that the people think that, okay, that there is a less time, okay, to, you know, to learn or not to see, everybody's got the bucket list, okay, that the, the two locations that to visit, okay, that the, but at the same time, this also brings the challenge, how we're gonna deliver this quality where the people, the same customer, gets in Europe or United States, okay, in the developed markets, but also travel is the lesser, the known places, maybe less safe in mindset, okay, or the less infrastructure. How we can deliver as the destination consultants, okay, what are the challenges, okay, that you are facing to communicate with the clients? Most of the time, your clients are the policymakers, the government, the state funds, okay, that they sometimes, okay, or more important, the private sector, where the cost is nowadays unpredictable. Before, we could manage how much it will cost, okay, and then what will be the variables. Now, the post-COVID, everything is, it can be either political issues, the chain, the supply chain can be broken very easily. So all of them has got direct impact to the cost. Yeah. How successfully we can communicate this one with the investors? Because as the developers, okay, we feel most of the time ourselves in a very fancy world. When we start the project, when the time is, defining the vision, opinions, okay, what are the suggestions and everything, everybody's around, okay? Everybody love to give the, the opinions, the directions, okay, what is. When it comes to the delivery, there's nobody around. We are all ourselves, and then dealing with the investors, or in most of the time, policymakers, okay, which there's no sustainability, okay, whether those policymakers will be there 2 years later, okay, 3 years later. How we are handling this, okay, or what are the changes, okay, the way that you communicate these issues is, okay, with the investor side?
Well, there's a lot there. I mean, one of the things you touched on, and I think it was raised by one of the speakers earlier as well, is this, there needs to be consistency between what is the marketing message, not just for leisure and cultural tourism, but also for inward investment. What is the message that we're putting out to the world about a particular destination, and what is the reality? And often you get this disconnect. We're saying one thing, but actually on the ground we're delivering something very different. And that's problematic, and that needs to be addressed. I think one of the areas where I think there's a real opportunity is we often talk about quality and we dress it up in moral terms almost. And I'm going to give you a scenario. We heard from one of the speakers earlier that there's an appetite for more local product, more independent artisanal product, as opposed to the global and inauthentic and branded product, which is true. Now, assume that you've got one retail destination on one side of the street, and you are the good developer who delivers that independent, artisanal, local product. And I am the nasty, greedy developer on this side of the street that delivers McDonald's and Starbucks and all those things. And we dress it up as that, as I'm the short-termist, greedy developer, and you're the benevolent one. In reality, it's a lot more nuanced than that, in my experience. It's that you probably have a financial model that has a 10-year horizon, and you've got the opportunity to cultivate and curate an environment that is of that higher quality. I've probably got a financial model that has a 5-year horizon, and I need to build it, lease it, sell it, and exit. And therefore, I don't have the opportunity that you have. And this is where I think the opportunity is for particularly the public sector coming together with the private sector, not necessarily in direct funding, it doesn't have to be subsidy, but in solving that financial riddle. So, I mean, you mentioned my experience in London. If you look at some of the best developments in the UK right now, King's Cross, Earl's Court, Media City up in Manchester, look at who the landowners are and who the principal developers are. It's London and Continental Railways, it's Transport for London, it's the BBC. These are big national institutions that have got 10, 20-year horizons. And it's that It's that financial riddle that needs solving rather than just dressing it up as, you're being too greedy and short-termist.
It's interesting what you said. Okay, maybe it's a coincidence. Okay, but our experience also as the WTIF, okay, the investment fund in Africa, we have a similar approach from the policymakers, from the public sector. They have a very realistic approach. They realize that okay, that they cannot attract the private investor to invest millions of the dollars in the hospitality. What they do is they invest from the government budget, but they also realize that okay, that having the operation by the state organization is also can be inefficient. Okay, so what they do is they are getting the private sector, okay, the angle by leasing those properties to the private sector with the condition that it will be branded and managed by the international operators. So they are covering all the concerns. Private investors will not come and not take the risk in today's environment, okay? And then but they also understand that the state is most of the time inefficient to operate, successfully, okay? And then yet, in order to put them into the international, the reservation system, as the international map, okay? They also understand the value of these international brands. So it's become like a more hybrid solution. Do you see this similar approach or the solutions for the investors or developers in the developed markets like Europe or the UK? I cannot add the UK anymore to the European after the Brexit, okay? But it's overall in the developed markets. Do you see this similar approach that as a developer we can utilize this?
Yeah, I don't. It's probably not so much that there's a preference for certain brands. It's a question of risk. It's known brands with provenance with a strong covenant. It just de-risks the financial equation. So the people who need to make these investment decisions, it makes their life easier. So again, I always come back to the idea that patient money, long-term money, tends to deliver solutions that are higher quality and more interesting because you've got the opportunity to take a little bit more risk. Whereas short-term money tends to deliver solutions that are lower risk and therefore more homogeneous. Now, I'll just pick up on one thing, which is my experience from working in sort of more developing environments, is that issue of benchmarks and where do you look for in terms of quality standards. And I do think it's important that where the general standard is lower, the ones who tend to stand out, they're not looking at the development across the street or the development across town. They're always looking, can I take my hotel or my shopping center or my restaurant? Would this fit in the middle of Manhattan or in the middle of London or the middle of Paris? They're always looking to what is international best practice, and we should aspire to that. And it's you need a few of those types of organizations to just start raising the standard of everybody around them.
Okay. Well, and one of the final, the question that that I would have is we all talk about after the pandemic, okay, but we also have the lessons, okay, that learned from the previous developments, okay, when you look at all the series of the events, what happened, okay, maybe last decade, okay, I think it's very important. It was a unique the period, especially from 2005 to 2020, 15 years. And in 2005, we see the flying monies. The money was not the issue, and then wherever you have a project, the good vision, okay, that the funding was following, okay, that immediately. By the 2008, 2009, okay, that there was a crash, okay, and then there was a certain period, okay, that there was a bit of a, the slowdown, and then suddenly again there was too much injection, okay, but where we see the public took the more role, okay, with the overall, the strategic decision-making progress. Okay, and then now is after the COVID. Okay, everything has changed. Demand is changed. The standards is the change, but yet we have so much stocks. Okay, from the previous developments, which is relatively new. Okay, like 10 years old. Okay, and then if you look at the commercial terms of any development, we are talking about 25 to 30. What kind of trends you're anticipating? Okay, that for the near future, like upcoming 5 to 10 years. Okay, that to make those previously, the completed projects, how we can make it more effective. Okay, that to meet the criteria of the new demand. Okay, that after the COVID, and then also for the investors and developers, where do you see the challenges and then the opportunities as the final the round of our questions?
Well, one other thing. First of all, it obviously isn't just COVID that's happened in the past couple of years. There's obviously been the situation in the Ukraine, which has caused disruption. But also, I think COVID in particular, it didn't create lots of new global trends. It accelerated a lot of things that were happening anyway. And in particular, in travel and tourism and hospitality, was this revolution that was being created by our facility with digital solutions. And what I mean by that is, it used to be a very mediated market. I think we heard earlier today from a speaker who was talking about what Lonely Planet said about his country or his destination. And we really used to do what Lonely Planet told us to do. You know, if we went to a city, we went where the Berlitz Guide told us to go, or where the New York Times or the Guardian travel section said were the destinations to go. We don't do that anymore. We don't behave that way anymore. Now we get our signals from our friends on Facebook or our peers on Twitter. Or, you know, if you're, you can go to very, what were, you know, difficult destinations, destinations that you didn't necessarily hear about, if that's where your tribe, where your interest group goes. And the classic example I always use is mountain bikers. You know, mountain bikers will go to the most far-flung destinations, and they will find the other mountain bikers because they're all talking to each other on the same YouTube channels and the same internet forums. This is all relatively new, and it's all been accelerated by what's happened with COVID. And I think this is an opportunity for destinations because, again, without that bossiness of the mainstream media telling us these are the places that you have to go, we can all find the things that we're passionate about, and we can all find the types of people that we we resonate with and that we're looking for. And therefore, you can be small and yet be successful. You can be on the fringes of the city, not necessarily in the city center, and still find an audience. And I think that's quite exciting. Sorry, there's just one last thing I'll say on that point is, what it's done is it's almost severed this connection. So it used to be, if I wanted to be successful and significant, then I needed to be large. If I needed to be large, then I needed to attract a large physical audience. And if I wanted to attract a large physical audience, then I needed to be in a central location. So there was a direct connection between significance, scale, and location. And I think that's just been completely blown apart. Because I can be a small yoga studio, and I'm very comfortable with having my 35 people that come into my yoga studio. And if I wanted to grow as a business, then historically, I would have to open a second one, and a third one, and a fourth one, and I would have to grow physically. I don't have to do that anymore. I can put a camera in my studio, and I can have customers all over the world, numbering in the tens of thousands, operating from my small physical studio that I'm comfortable with. And so that severing between scale, significance, and location, I think, is an interesting thing that opens lots of opportunities. And it allows smaller organizations and businesses and individuals to get into the industry in a way that wasn't possible, 10 years ago.
Well, it may sound like, okay, it's a challenge, okay, for the maybe spa or the fitness developments. But on the other hand, is actually you are increasing your potential customer by the making the yoga or different activities is more popular. You're making a kind of part of the day-to-day life, the one so then where there is more demand, you're creating the more demand, with this. Well, thanks very much again for joining us, and then thank you very much for being very patient, and then waiting for the delayed session, and then just before we close, regarding the previous session, the tourism, I always believe that I'm a born tourism after the high school, university, hotel management, development. I've been on the both sides. I think tourism is a very feminine sector, and I think the woman is always in a great need. And then anything that in the tourism, to be changed in a better, it needs definitely woman touch. So we will be there always for you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.